Okay, well, I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and our Guardian organization was something that was well known in the city of Bridgeport. So when I became a Bridgeport police officer, I felt like I was honored and duty bound to join the organization because I was able to see some of the stuff that they did in the community. I knew a lot of the officers that were involved in the organization. I knew about the lawsuits and all that other stuff. So I couldn't wait to join, to be honest with you. I felt better about joining that organization than I did the police department as a whole.
Sheriff BILAL? Okay.
What made me get involved was basically I saw the Guardian Civic League members in the streets going against what was happening to our people in our neighborhoods. And once I joined the police, because the Guardian Civic League came around recruiting for us, they wanted us to join because after the lawsuit they filed in this city, they wanted the police department to have the makeup of the African Americans in the city. And so they filed the lawsuit and they won. So that lawsuit stated that how many of us took that test, that's how many of us needed to be in those classes. So they came around in our neighborhoods heavily, even though our attitude towards police was we didn't like them. We didn't like them in our neighborhood. We just didn't like them when they came, but they were persistent. And when I saw that in Fonzo Deal and how FOP didn't want him going in, so these things was broadcast on the news. Now my girlfriends talked me into joining the police department. I was happy as the federal government postal person, where my mother thought that was the greatest thing. And to this day, I still call it the plantation, however you want to call that. But when they came around, I was between that and Philadelphia Police Department, and they gave me some incentives. But it was when I got into the academy is when racism hit me in my face, as far as disparity in treatment, how they would treat me versus how they would treat white officers. And no sooner than I graduated from the police academy, I ran down to be a member of the Guardian Civic League, because I remember what I saw on TV. I remember them coming in my neighborhood, and then I saw how I was being treated up at the police academy. So that made me get involved in the Guardian Civic League.
Okay, let me ask you a quick question. As far as the Guardian Civic League, are there like an affiliation with the Guardian Association?
The Guardian Association?
Yeah, the Guardians.
Well, the Guardian Civic League is the original. I don't know, but the Guardian Association. There's a Guardian Association here in my city.
The Grand Council of Guardians that that's basically.
We were all members of the National Black Police Association.
Right.
When the National Black Police Association formed, there were the little organizations in the different cities that came together to help form the NBPA. That's how we got into there. So we were all like local chapters of the national organization.
Okay. All right. Charles?
No, you'll go right ahead. I'm listening.
Okay. Now you already pretty much hit on my next question with what were the main issues coming to the department. Obviously, yours was recruiting and getting blacks in. But I want to ask David Daniels, you come to the Department of Bridgeport, what was the main issue that you had to deal with when you first got to the department?
Well, the biggest issue in the Bridgeport Police Department was racism and discrimination.
Out of that, the 100 Black Men nationally was born.
What is that? But we were in the midst of lawsuits when I came on, and we were trying to get people made sergeant. We're trying to get people to climb the corporate ladder, so to speak. We're trying to get more sergeants, more lieutenants, more captains, because we didn't have that much. Recruitment was a problem, but we had a lot of black cops that were already in the department that were having personal problems with assignments, with them being mistreated and stuff like that. So the biggest thing was racism and discrimination.
Oh, okay. Charles?
No, yo, I'm I'll jump in when necessary. Y'all go ahead.
I just want to jump in there because I hear you.
Yeah,
You
please.
mentioned about lawsuits a couple of times already. And I know that around the same time, even with the Correction Guardian Associations, they had a lot of lawsuits that were going on as far as promotions and transfers and all those type of things. Can you speak more to that about what those lawsuits entailed and how did it actually affect your agency when it came down towards blacks in your agency?
Okay, when the Bridgeport Guardians was formed in the early 70s, they started the initial lawsuit, and those lawsuits led to a special master being put over the Bridgeport Police Department because it was hard to sue the police department. When you sue your departments for racism, it's the hardest thing to prove. We kept going back to court over and over and over again. So the federal court said, look, we're going to take a lawyer and make him a special master over your police department. And whenever there's a discrimination issue or racism or anything like that, you got a pipeline to the court. You know, you go straight to the special master and he will adjudicate the circumstances. That led to a lot of changes in the. As a matter of fact, if you know anything about case law, most of the lawsuits that we instituted in Bridgeport, Connecticut, were case law all over the nation. And most of the time, most of our presidents shared that information with organizations all over the country, so they could institute their own lawsuits against local departments. So it's our case law is right there in the books.
And in Philadelphia, our lawsuit came out of the fact that the department was unbalanced as far as people of color, as far as black people. What they did, the Guardians said that basically they filed a lawsuit, and out of that came a consent decree, because the Guardians was started in 1956. And so therefore the consent decree basically stated that they had to balance out. They wanted the makeup of the city. The city was 43% black people. Wow. And they wanted the department to basically resemble that makeup. And so that's how that lawsuit came about. That's the consent decree came in, and the recruitment came because I was one of the people that was, that came on the job because of that lawsuit. And see, now the Guardians had to go on a list of recruitment to make sure that how many of us took the test. That's the amount of people that had to go in the class. So the Guardians started a sort of educational part on how to take the test. So not only did they have to go out and recruit, but now they have to hold study groups on how you take the test, what the test is about, what you have to get prepared for, and how you have to deal with that lie detector test, that polygraph situation that they will give you, how you will have to deal with the background investigators. And so all of that came into part. And then when department, that consent decree came into play, then you had people started getting into promotion or wanting to get promoted within the department. So the Guardians started the study group for them to now study there in order to move up in the ranks, because what they were looking at was to make sure that certain people were certain places, so that when we came on the job through that consent decree, that those people in places that wanted to get us, not let us basically follow through or let us continue on as to being police officers, that there were people in place to make sure that they didn't get us off. Like we was up at the police academy and you had a white instructor that will say something to me, but he wouldn't say nothing to the white girl. But the supervisor up there happened to be African-American. And so therefore, when the white guy go up to the supervisor and it was against one of us, then that supervisor would come ask us what happened, then that overturned anything that they attempted to do. So people were put in places to make sure that we succeeded.
So that was one of the reasons why I asked the question, was to get that foundational information, because when we're talking about the younger officers of this generation today, that's a part of the history of our organizations that's been lacking, that we haven't really pushed it and passed it on to this generation. Understand that it ain't just because you took that test and you got here. A lot went on before you took that test to get here. So we kind of like missed the boat, or kind of like lacked and passed on that information of that foundation, how you were able to get the job, not only getting the job, but also getting the promotions.
That's because people, once they got on the job, They was like, oh, I got here on my own and
Right.
I'm gonna make my money. And there was no pull anybody up. They started becoming crabs in the barrel. That's what I started seeing. And so therefore we had to deal with those of our members that felt that way. And,
Right.
and basically make them feel bad when they didn't get in and support and help train and come down to the study groups and participated to make sure those who were studying get promoted too. See, we get into these positions and then all of a sudden we arrive and now we got to think we got to be fair, and then we don't think about bringing up the next person to take the position.
Yep, true.
Yeah, no, which is key though, but I'm gonna jump back. Last week we had Ron Hampton, Preston Gilstrap, and Wendell France on, and when they talked about that era during that period of time when they, about the formulation of the NBPA or the other Black fraternal organization. I mean, during that period of time, and the struggles they was going through. I myself came around the same time y'all did, if not sooner or earlier. Or later. So my question is now is that going from that era, from fighting the power, I would say, where they stood up and they had to be upfront, and these guys literally was upfront with what their message was, to the era where we came in and how you would say, how do we take it to the next level? That would be my next question to the both of y'all, to say what was needed to go from that era to where we got more involved, or when y'all started joining. Either one, you can jump in, don't matter.
So how do we take this to the next level? If we are in these organizations, we're still there. And we have to continuously take on the attitude of how do we get to the next generation? How do we get to them? How do we get to them in a workplace as to talk about your organization and its history and what it's done? We at the Guardians came up with our what we call Steer Straight program. 2 parts to the program. One was to come up there, go to the districts. The Steer Straight is up at the Police Academy. It's 2 programs we did. It's Officer Appreciation Day. Officer Appreciation Day came about when we decided we were going to go around to the different districts. And as much as they heard that nobody liked police, we went there with a message that there are a lot of people that like police, and talked to them about what the Guardian Civic League was about, everything that we did, the programs, the fact that we ran the whiteboard study group out of the city because we became the best, because those that went through the class came back and taught it. So that study group, or that going out to the Officer Appreciation Day, gave insight to those who are tuned out as to what these organizations are about, what they did. So we did that, bought them food, little giveaways, bought a little sponsor, and they sponsored the food, and we went around to every district. In that part was part of recruitment. So every avenue that we thought of recruitment. Then Steer Straight program was the curriculum that we developed in the Guardian by going up to the Police Academy. And the Steer Straight is about what could cost you your career. And so we're telling them the things that you're doing can cost you your career. So we brought up different people, community organizations. We brought up those community radio show hosts that would talk about the police department. We brought them up there. We brought the NAACP up there. We brought people that are in charge, like city council people, who the public safety person that's in charge of the police department. We bring the DA up there. We bring the police commissioner up there. We bring the sheriff up. We bring people up there to tell these recruits what could cost you your career. At the same token, we're also telling them about the Guardian Civic League and the different things that happen to officers in their career and how they lost their career. And so we're doing that on a 2-fold thing. So in order us to keep going, we have to keep reinventing a way of getting to these officers in our districts that are coming on the departments, the ones that think, oh, I just took the test and miraculously I'm here. We have to see how we have to get into the department to do it. Because if you stay outside of the department to do it, then you get the minimum, because they're not going to come to you. If you put out a meeting, we're going to have food, they're not going to come to you. So now you have to figure out how to get into the department to get your message across. And so those are the things that we did. We have the steer straight up at the police academy. They bought into it. It's talk about your career, which the department said yay, and also recruit. Because now we're talking about the Guardian Civic League and how they need to be members of. So you got to reinvent ways on getting in the department so that you can get to these officers. And basically really up at the police academy.
Well, I just want to add before Dave jump in. Dave, what would you say, what was the piece that was missing or what was needed to add in to bring it from that era, from the Preston Gilstraps and the Rons and to, I mean, according to what Del is saying too also. Dave?
Okay, well, on a local level, the problems I saw with the local organization were that we all discussed it here prior, is that, you know, the local cops didn't really understand or know the history of how deep that was. So when I became president, the first thing I tried to do and succeeded at was to get us a building, because we were meeting at a bar, and the problem with that was, you know, some of the members would get drunk and wouldn't even come upstairs to the meeting. So I made a deal with a person who owned the building that gave us some office space. And I started looking through the Guardian archives, and I saw pictures of Ted Meekins and people that came before me doing things in the neighborhood. I made poster boards and put that history up on the wall. I took our logo and made it really big poster. And I found out all of our members that had passed away, and I went out and got an award and had all of their names put on it. So I put the history right on the wall so that they could see. I guess today they call all of that branding. I make sure that we had those little cloisonné pens, and you know, we got jackets, and we started sponsoring baseball teams and doing things in the neighborhood so that I could instill a sense of pride in the membership and make them, you know, not only proud to be a part of the organization, but see, you know, what the past was like and what the prospects of the future could be. And, you know, I cajoled them into doing things in the neighborhood and getting us involved in, you know, community cleanups and a bunch of other stuff. And that made the membership more cognizant of where they came from and where they could actually go and actually get more involved. I think that over time we lost that to a degree, because now, you know, most of us are retired. People in charge aren't doing that because they're all about that money. They really don't want the officers that are on the job now to know that history, because they're not really community oriented. They're about making money and doing selfish things. Like I said, I stopped going to Guardian meetings 2 years before I retired because I seen the tide turning, and I felt like an angry old man. You know, I'm going to the meetings and I'm hearing all this crazy stuff that they're talking about, and I'm the only one dissenting. You know, it got to a point where, you know, people would come up with something and they would look at me and see if I had something bad to say about it. And it wasn't that I was trying to say anything bad. I just felt that they had strayed from the path that we had been put on. So it was easier for me to just walk away and not be a part of that, because I knew that, you know, my time was short. I had done just about all that I could do. But I think that if these organizations are going to return or return with the same fervor and strength that they had initially, we have to go back to that, because I don't see the same fire and desire in these cops. I try to talk to them, and I just don't see it. And it's crazy because I know 2 years before I retired also was when Facebook really started coming into prominence. And I saw that there was a Black Cop Facebook page. So, you know, I happily, quickly joined, and 2 days on the page I had to get off because all the cops were doing were trying to make out with each other. It wasn't about the struggle. It wasn't about uplifting one another. It wasn't about preparing people to take promotional exams. All of that stuff had fell to the wayside. And, you know, cops were in their little sexy vests and had their hair all done up, and they were just talking to each other and trying to hook up with each other. And that was like, that's when I knew that, you know, things had changed to a point that had gotten so bad that I didn't feel like I had a place in any of that. We got to go back to spewing the history and making these cops being proud of where they came from. You know, we got to go back to reminding them who they are and what their standing is and what they should be doing in our community. Because that's what it's all about.
All right, thank you. Also, I want to introduce Brother Dr. LACY Davis, who just joined us. He's another part of our panelists. So I'm going to allow LACY to tell us a little bit about himself. Brother, you want to jump in?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Brother Charles, and to the panel and to our colleagues that are from everywhere. So most recently, I am currently Executive Director for the Family Support Organization in Union County, New Jersey. We provide support services, education, and advocacy to parents of children with special needs. Currently run 3 of those organizations. Mine have been at 7 years. And we also deal with juvenile justice system in the sense of juveniles who are justice involved in trying to actually steer their parents through the system with their children. One of the requirements to work at the agency is that you have a special needs child. So 2 of the 4 children that I adopted while on the police force are special needs, which qualified me in that position. Currently, I'm also the Executive Director for New Jersey's Alliance of Family Support Organizations, where we provide training and certification for all 15 FSOs across the entire state and certifying their staff, but also coming in to provide technical assistance and guidance when the organization is fledgling. So that's currently what I've been doing. And most recently, my dissertation was published in January. Police use of force, examining the factors relating to police officers shooting unarmed Black males, looking at implicit bias, explicit bias, and I use a North Jersey Police Department and a firearm simulator and 4 scenarios in which we had a white female with a gun, white male with a gun, Black male with a gun, Black male without the gun. And we were looking for implicit bias, and certainly when we compared the officer's reaction time and error rate in shooting the Black male versus the white female, there was significant bias demonstrated. So that's what I've been doing. I'm obviously doing research in addition to everything else that we're trying to do, and working with Sheriff BILAL and the rest of our colleagues around the country to try to make change, and systemic change, not simply some of the things that we're talking about, but long-lasting change so that the future generations actually will not only know the history that Dave is talking about and be beneficiaries of the types of promotional exams and training for those exams that they were doing in Bridgeport as well as in Philadelphia. And also having the benefit of folks like I saw Ron Hampton on here, who were some of the people that helped to guide me as a young officer. But I think what we have is structural racism, but we also have structural failures, I believe, in terms of law enforcement, in terms of Black police officers. I think that we've come up short, generally speaking, over the last 25 years. And I think that Black women picked up the baton when and where they could to actually stand in the gap. But Black men, when we reach some of these places of whatever we thought we were striving for, we failed to take stands and restructure the environment so that our community could survive it. And so what we get is now we have young people who don't give a damn about being Black, let alone the Black community, because Black people don't know that they're Black, let alone Black police officers. So that's where I start.
I wanted to add into with Dave Daniels as far as just add a little bit more to that. In Guardians in Philadelphia, as far as we saw the shift changing, so we had to figure out how to get in with the shift changing and let our members know the organization and what it is and what it has to do. So one of the things that we started doing was making sure that the next group to come up to take over the organization worked in that organization. So now you have Crystal as the president of the Guardian Civic League, and she used to be my executive vice president at the Guardian Civic League. So she came up under me. So she knew basically why we were doing what we were doing, and that we weren't about to let that change just take over and not anybody participate. So that being said, those young people who started thinking that they could do what everybody else do, and when they got their butt in trouble, where did they go? They had to come show up at the Guardian Civic League. And see, my thing with them is, okay, are you a member? No, but you need help, right? How long you been on the job? 5 years. So let's figure out what your dues you will have to pay for the past 5 years. And we're not jumping in to help you just because you're Black anymore. You have to put in some time and some of your resources into this organization before we jump in. And everybody's like, oh no, you're supposed to support all the Black ones. No, no. We are now saying to them, if you want us to help you, and you know we can, then you have to bring in some money, some dudes. So I started looking and said, now we can talk about cutting it in half, but you're gonna have to pay something. You're not just gonna take the resources that members pay in this organization and utilize it for you for free. So we had to basically start dealing with that issue with our Black officers. And then the word gets around. Well, I went to the Guardian. I know I wasn't a member. They made me pay, but when I got involved in it, then they stayed involved. Because the organization that helped them more so where they thought they can go, they now became involved in the organization, and the organization continues to replenish its membership from the retirees to the active. So we kept the fight on. We weren't gonna let them go. Even though we saw the shift, we just had to figure out from our perspective, because we know this organization needs to keep going. And however they think Black officers are going to be, we weren't gonna let that happen. So we had to sit down, get in our heads, get in specialist heads, how we keep going after the officers that look like us, that maybe not have the knowledge that we came up under, and how we can give it to them. So those things that we do in the district, in the police academy, and then those that get in trouble that need our help, they just don't come for free anymore. They gotta pay.
All right. Oh, great, great. No, I want to throw something back at the LACY again, and before we go to Dave. One of the questions came up in the idea of the use of technology and social media now. Is that a good or a bad, or how does it benefit Black law enforcement or members of these different fraternal organizations, or how can it be used to take us to the next step?
I think that technology can be effective when used appropriately, but it's not a replacement for doing the work, boots on the ground. You know, Dave alluded to some of that. At the end of the day, what we're talking about is relationship and relationship building. So if you can build an effective relationship using technology, then use it. I don't think there's any one right way of engaging people and connecting with people. I can tell you that my relationship with probably 2/3 of the folks on this, not only the panel, but also on this call, came from relationships. And when they pick up the phone and call me, it's not whether or not I'm seeing them in social media. It is, what is that relationship? What do I think of when they call me for help, whether it's an Elliot Boyes, a Dave Daniels, a Crystal Williams, a Shirley Phipps? I'm going to think back to the relationship, because that's what we do in the work I currently do. We have to build meaningful relationships. I think that if you have superficial relationships in real life, you're going to have them in social media. And so you become an armchair revolutionary in that you talk a bunch of smack behind the chair. But when Rochelle or one of us calls you and says, hey, we need you on the front line down in Tennessee, or we need you on the front line in San Francisco, California, unfortunately, the closest you can get to it is on the internet. And that doesn't hold water when we're fighting against our racist white counterparts who are in the FOPs and the PBAs and all in between, who are willing to fight us to the death, no matter what the rule of engagement is. And so I think it has value, certainly. But at the end of the day, I don't think it replaces old-fashioned relationship building. You know, as Hosea Reynolds and I used to say when we started Black Cops Against Police Brutality, we're off the plantation running north, and we can't turn back now. These Negroes that are using technology to be hard and tough have not accomplished anything.
Oh, great, great. Dave, you want to jump in there and add?
Yeah, I think that using social media is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing in the sense that I can say something and 5,000 people can read it instantaneously. If I got something to sell, I can put it up there and I can get an audience to buy it. It's a curse in the sense that, like LACY said, you know, people hide behind social media. People use social media to give you the impression that they're doing things that they're not. I've seen people in the neighborhood come out to a community cleanup, take a picture of themselves holding a broom, and then skittle on off to somewhere else. And if all the people on Facebook think what a great person this is, he's out there, you know, cleaning up the community when he in fact hasn't done anything. So I think it's like everything else. You have to use it to your advantage. You have to be cognizant of what works on it and what doesn't work. I think it can be used as a mechanism to engage people. But in the long run, I think that you have to stay old school. And like LACY said, you have to build your relationships off of being in that person's presence. Like when I look at LACY, I don't know what other people see, but I know LACY. When I look at Rochelle, I know them. You know, when I see, you know, you on TV, Charles, you know, I know you. You know, I'm not looking at you on ABC News. I'm looking at you in my mind and saying, you know, we had dinner somewhere, or we were in some other city or some other stuff. So our relationships are more cohesive and tight and more personal. So I think it's all in how you use it and what you expect to gain.
I'm in agreement with both of them. A friend reminded me today about relationships. Relationships are people keeping their word.
That's right.
You know, relationships are people that when they say they're going to do something, they can. And you're right, because a lot of people hide behind that social media situation. And Dave is right. It could be good or it could be a curse, because some of us get on social media and think in their mind that I can put up a fake name and a fake picture and it'll never come to me as I'm the one saying this old crazy stuff on Facebook, but yet they finding out that they can reach out and touch them while on that so-called Facebook, while they spitting out that foul image and you are in law enforcement. We can find you and we can identify you, and then we can deal with you as far as that is concerned. But those relationships that we built over the years is more important than how I connect with anybody on any social media page. And when young cops are on there, because I'm on there, I look sometimes and I see them posting certain things, then I'm texting them, messaging them saying, you're working, you might not want to have that posted. And I think you need to take it down, because you have a media policy, especially in this department, that came out of the lawsuit from the Guardian Civic League, dome lights thing, that you might want to take that down before you get your butt in trouble. And we say that to the young people who think that they can go on there and think they are in incognito or their anonymity. They can't associate them with them, but yes, they can. And so relationships is 100% way that we need to build with our younger cops, as to, you got to keep your word when you say you're going to do something. You got to keep your word when you say you're going to show up places, because at that time, because the pendulum always swing around, especially if you're African-American, when the gray boy gets to you, you want to run back here. But if you hadn't built any relationship with the organization, even though you paid your dues to, you built no relationship, you showed up no time, you know, now you're expecting us to go all guns on you, and we don't even know who you are. So your relationships mean a lot.
Oh, great. All right, just one other question. Last week, again, we talked, Ron and Preston and they talk about what they went through and where they went wrong, or what they didn't prepare for. I mean, the next level coming in, from what I watched from my own eyes, LACY was president, I think at the time, of the Northeast region, and Dave, you was vice president, if I'm correct. Rochelle, you was part of the board. And the idea of what they went wrong, or what they assumed they went wrong, what was the catch, or what was the next step that was needed to move the organization further, which probably didn't happen or was attempted to happen?
I would argue very simply, we failed to institutionalize the movement. We failed to monetize our collective knowledge and skill set. You know, one of the criticisms that I had, and it wasn't an indictment of anyone personally, but a criticism, was that there were older people making decisions for us younger people. They were looking down the hill, facing retirement or retired, and figuring how to supplement the income. And we were looking up the hill and thinking about what does the future look like 15, 20, 25 years from now. The reality is that much of what we were critical of then, I know that Dave, myself, and Rochelle do now. So for example, I make my living using social media. I'm going into institutions, and the very expertise that we developed before we get to the doctorate in research, but the expertise that I developed being around all of you, people pay $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 for 3 days worth of that. And so my criticism in the Northeast region to our colleagues around the country was, why are we so confident to be these great Black police officers, investigators, crime fighters, and we are Panthers on the streets, punks in the precincts, and we're not willing to build institutions for the next generation of young Black men and women coming behind us by building on our skill set. And as Dave talked about having a building in Rochelle, I mean, we're talking about institution building. Malcolm said a landless people is a powerless people. And so we needed to generate wealth that would be continual for each generation. They're doing the same thing in Newark with the Bronze Shields, okay? They're now breaking ground for a brand new building. You gotta have land. So we're talking 25 years later, and police or Black police organizations don't have land. The FOP that we're fighting and the PBA got buildings, however they got them. They have them. So that's got to be the minimum standard. Additionally, we've got experts at the table. I don't care whether it's Rochelle, Dave, you, or anybody else that's taking the lead. I'm currently doing a contract now with Dr. Tyrone Powers. It's a multi-$1,000 contract. On the last contract, I was the lead. He was the lead. On this contract, I'm the lead. We went into Bermuda. We got 6 figures. I brought Rochelle in and 12 more people. That's where I think we went wrong, because at that point I was 27, 30 years old, and I understood that people were afraid of the fire. But I saw what I saw then, what we're realizing now. You've got to be able to eat. How will you keep the attention in a capitalist society of young officers that don't have access to any capital? And you're wondering, you're talking about Black power and power to the people. The people are poor, the village is sick, we sick boss, and you want me to buy into something that you can't do. Because I see you when your white counterpart shoots your people, guns down your people, and calls your women bitches, and you don't have the heart or the testicular fortitude to stand up and challenge that white boy where he stands. And you got the same little pea shooter on that he has, but you're acting like less than a man. And women have had to take the lead on that. So yeah, that's where we went wrong.
My man.
Let me add to that. What we're seeing, because we have not disconnect here. The LACY, myself, Tyrone Powers, we continue to do the work. I don't think I would be the sheriff today if the work stopped. What I did see is, it's too many of us that has a special, that has a intellect, that has knowledge, that once we even retire, we go into a cocoon and we let that knowledge just die. So I took it another way. I formed RB Consultants.
That's right.
RB Consultants, with all my training in the institution of law enforcement. Now, if you retired, and I know you have all this intellect and all this education and all this expertise, when there are a lot of cities around this country that don't have none of that.
That's right.
And so now I began to market us. You retire, give me your resume, RB Consultants. I put it out there, and then somebody called me and said, I need somebody to come into my city to do this type of training for my department or for my community. I'm on the phone. Okay, we can do that. I get on the phone, I need you to go here. They're gonna take care of your flight, your room and board. They're gonna pay RB Consultants. You do the job, consultants get paid, then I'll pay you for going. So we're now taking all the expertise we have. We can no longer sit on the sidelines here, everybody. Even though you retired, you have a lot of knowledge. Your department trained you up the hill. And I know you took as much training as you possibly could when you was in that department. And so now the institution of our consulting business is for all of us. For all of us to become a part of training everybody else around the country as to what we know. And then, and while you're doing that, now you take the conscious part of what you learned in these institutions, and you make that a part of your training tool when you out somewhere else training. So you start now saying, okay, I'm gonna train you on supervision. But in my curriculum that I'm going to do with you in supervision, now I need to touch into your consciousness on how you supervise. And it's balanced across the scale. Are you supervising these people differently? Or no, it works across the scale here. And then you have to take into account that a lot of us need to go and do this so they can see the fact that you grew up in these institutions and now you're coming back to train them as to what you do. We have too many expertise to sit back and do nothing here.
That's right.
So if whether I do it, the LACY do it, Dave Daniels do it, Crystal, anybody that basically can come together and begin to train everybody else around the country. We can't just go home and sit back no more. These people are killing us. My girl said they broke the social contract. A long time ago they did that.
That's right.
And so we have to be able to develop those things amongst ourselves to get. So that's the next stand that we're moving towards. Because anytime I need to bring the LACY in to train my people, because I've gotten to this position, then that's what I need to do. So if you get into a position in your status, then you need to look back and reach back and pull the people that you have been around and came up upon and have them come in and begin to train the people you need trained. Don't get into this. The problem I saw is we got into this personal thing about us. Oh, I don't like him. I don't like her. She don't like him. Come on now. Those who slaved and fought to be free did not get into who liked who. Their objective was to get free.
That's right.
And that should be the objective of us, is to basically train the next generation to be free in their mind and thinking, and to be free to stand up against racism in these institutions and not fear it because they're looking for the dime or it's going to mess with their money. That's what we need to do now.
Which is,
Dave, you want to jump in? Or LACY,
yeah.
you can say
Yeah,
something.
let me just make this quick point, which is one of the reasons why we talk about the condition in our community and talk about economics. I understand if you're a young officer and you're making $100,000 a year, you got a high school diploma, that's all you needed, or 2 years of college to get on the force, and one of us crazy folks are telling you to stand up and sacrifice it all to tell the truth. It's hard to not see any evil, to not speak any evil, and not hear any evil, because you got to choose between feeding your family and standing up for what is right, which is why it's important for us to have an economic engine that affords us the opportunity to survive when we challenge the system. So Rochelle has been delicate about it, so has Dave, but the reality is that they've sued people and won, right? So Rochelle probably leading the group. You come at Rochelle, she's gonna get her lawyers together, they're gonna sue you, they're gonna win, and she's gonna go another round. That's how Dome Light gets taken off the net. And then she forces the city government and police department to make systemic change, right? Same thing with me. My last institution, I had to sue them. It took 2 years, but once I sued them, it could pay off all my debt. Now I'm in a stronger position to be just as vocal. So it's not lost on us that folks still have to eat, which is why, let's think of it this way. Y'all remember Dr. Tyrone Powers? You remember Coach Powell, Tyrone Powers, Linworth Gunther, all of them came through with us in the Northeast region in the 90s. We're still all connected. We all still do business together. So imagine if we multiply that times the 41 who are on this call, so that when one of these brothers or sisters has a budget that you control, not only are you able to come back to this network and call us like Perf does and all the international chiefs of police do and keep the money amongst themselves, but we also bring that expertise. So we're writing curriculum. We're controlling the narrative around policing in Black and brown communities, who are most of the people being victimized by policing in Black and brown communities. Go ahead, Dave, I'm sorry.
And when I took over as president of NABLEO, or what became NABLEO, because when I was president, we weren't actually NABLEO yet. You know, from the bird's eye perch that I had one day, standing behind a dais, I looked out into the audience and I saw all of these experts that were just members of local organizations. So I decided to try to engage them and try to get them to do things like the Elliott Boyces, the Lisa Wilsons. I approached them and had them do workshops for us. You know, they didn't want to do it. I said, hey, you know, you're teaching there, and you're trained in all these disciplines within the police department. Why are we paying speakers to come before us when you guys have the same expertise they do? And you're probably better at it than they do because you're, you know, boots on the ground working it. But the weird dynamic for me at that time was that we had just left the NBPA, and I had half the congregation wanting to go back, and the other half not really sure about the future. So my job was just to calm everybody, keep everybody together, and then to start to suggest that, hey, we might not be able to go back. Let's start figuring out what our name is going to be. Let's start figuring out who we're going to be, how we're going to define ourselves. Are we going to be a local organization, regional organization, national organization? So I never got a chance to do the three things that I wanted. The first thing I wanted was just what LACY and Rochelle talked about. because we had all these talented people. They could have been a clearinghouse for workshops all over the country. And that would have kept the mother organization rich, and that would have gave the people that were engaged something to do that they could be proud of. The other thing was I wanted to finish the separation and make us become NABLEO. And then I wanted to just go forward as the national organization to be better than where we came from. You know, it was weird because I was getting pulled in all these different directions, but I'm sitting here smiling because when you listen to Rochelle and you listen to LACY, that is our future. Think about it. Everybody that's sitting here has got experiences and training that nobody else has. Nobody has the training that you have. You know, you might think, oh, well, I'm just a patrolman. You were trained for 6 months in the police academy. You know things that people will never know. You can look at a dollar bill and see things that they can't. I'm glad to hear that you know, that people have finally realized that there is a premium on the things that we know. Because for a long time, you know, Rochelle was doing things. You know, we got to collaborate on a couple of things. The LACY's doing things. I'm doing things, and you know, there's so many more people that can make this sort a more robust effort. And then maybe if the young people see that, you know, we're doing this, maybe they'll re-engage, because I think that we kind of lost that. And maybe they're so focused on the money because they don't realize that there's ways to supplement that revenue stream with the knowledge that they have. They don't have to, you know, work another shift or sit in the store for 8 hours or stand in the rain over a manhole cover to make that money. So I'm excited about the prospects for the future, but we got to find a way to, you know, to put that spirit in a bottle and make it work for us, because that's our future. This is what we should be doing.